Greetings and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, executive editor of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me today is the Center Square Washington, D.C.'s bureau chief, Casey Harper. Casey, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you? You have any big plans for your 3-day weekend? I'm working this weekend, but I know that you're taking some time off.
I know you've been away for about a month on vacation, but this weekend is not Memorial Day weekend. Next weekend is Memorial Day weekend. So you don't get a 3-day weekend this weekend coming off your month-long vacation to South America.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm just so deep in these articles. I don't even remember what day it is.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm here to help you. We are recording this on Friday, May 19th. Casey, U.S. Senator Marco Rubio released some information this week regarding the origins of COVID-19 and the very real possibility that it began in the Wuhan, China lab where they were testing and experimenting on coronaviruses. Tell us what Marco Rubio's report revealed.
Yeah, this is a really interesting report. Of course, Rubio is he's in the Senate and he's on, he works with the intelligence community pretty closely, more than most lawmakers because of his committee positions. He's on the Select Committee on Intelligence and the Committee on Foreign Relations. So he is a well-placed lawmaker to be looking into this kind of thing. There's been a few senators who have been particularly interested. Some have tried to kind of sweep this under the rug. Where did the virus come from a Wuhan lab? But it's important to know because, well, one, U.S. tax dollars helped fund this lab, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And two, there's a lot of questions about China's role in this virus and how much they knew and how much they hid from the rest of the world. And a lot of the evidence shows that, and this is what gets into the report that I thought was most interesting, is that China knew what was happening well before they really alerted the world to the seriousness of it, probably because they didn't want to get blamed for the virus, right? So I can go into some of the evidence right here that was laid out. But so Chinese scientists have been studying these coronaviruses for a while. That's not really a new thing. There is question about how we study them and the way that we may be actually creating new deadly viruses that are worse than previous ones in some of these labs, and how that could be a risk, and that's its own issue. But according to the report, officials in China were aware that the lab already was vulnerable to an accident like this. So in 2019, the Chinese Academy of Sciences, they did an inspection of the Wuhan facility and said that it needed a security upgrade. They pointed out some flaws with the lab. The Chinese Communist Party secretary of the lab said it had shortcomings and foundational problems. That's a quote. Foundational problems in the construction, operation, and maintenance. Okay, that's pretty serious. And so there's other similar evaluations. Another data point here is that from December of 2019, so beginning in December of 2019 to October 2021, researchers from that same lab have filed patents for inventions that would have prevented a lab leak. So the lab leak, remember, everything really in America just went down the drain in like February or March of 2020, right? But now we know that 4 months before that, Wuhan researchers were filing patents for inventions to prevent lab leaks. Okay, now that could be a coincidence, but at that point, the virus had begun to spread in China. The Wuhan researchers were clearly very concerned about lab leaks around that same time and actually filed new patents to deal with it. So that's another really interesting data point. And also, we just know for a fact that China knew that this virus is really deadly, that they were doing everything domestically to prevent it from being spread and really freaking out, but they didn't tell the rest of the world, and they were denying. Then they still denied that the virus could have come from a lab. But if you look at the paper trail of scientists in that who are connected to this project, they seem to be acting really suspiciously. And one more point before I hand it off to you, Dan, is that Chinese scientists filed a patent for a COVID-19 vaccine on February 24th of 2020. So Chinese scientists were already working on a vaccine for this virus, also working on technology to prevent lab leaks before it had really even exploded in the United States. So I think there's some pretty interesting data points there to show you what was going on behind the scenes with these Chinese scientists.
Of course, in 2020 and into 2021, with the virus known to have been started in Wuhan, there was plenty of people wondering, saying, hey, this might have started in the Wuhan lab. The federal government tried to debunk. I remember Anthony Fauci tried to, who was tied to the Wuhan lab because he gave federal grant dollars, taxpayer dollars to the Wuhan lab to push this research forward. But many in the federal government, including Dr. Anthony Fauci himself, and the mainstream media went along, debunked that, even mocked those who said, hey, this very well could have started in the Wuhan lab. But now that is just another story that I guess we don't know for sure yet the virus was started in the lab, but there's plenty of evidence to conclude that. The FBI has even come out and said that they believe that's where the origin of COVID-19 began. And now you have this new information that China was worried about it. So I don't know. It just seems like another one of those stories that the mainstream media got wrong early on by siding with essentially Democrats who are insisting it did not start at the Wuhan lab.
Right. And the Department of Energy also did their own investigation. The Wall Street Journal reported this a little while back, and they reported to the White House that they also believed it came from a lab. So you had the DOE and the FBI saying the same thing. But you're absolutely right about the media totally missing this. And it's really sad because I hate the conspiracy theory strain that has really infiltrated a lot of modern American politics. I think it's not good generally. It's not healthy. But the sad thing is, it's gotten to the point where a lot of these things that were once called conspiracy theories have just been either become verified truth, like the Hunter Biden laptop, or they've become from conspiracy theory to very plausible. We may never know for sure where this virus came from. But for example, now we know there's plenty of evidence to say it could have come from the Wuhan lab, and it's not at all a conspiracy to say that that's a real possibility. But if you initially said that, the media mocked you, called it conspiracy theory. It's the same with Hunter Biden's laptop. The same when Trump said that his campaign was being spied on. It's the same if you disbelieve the Steele dossier. It's the same if you didn't believe in Russian collusion. With all these things have pretty much been debunked, and which if you disagree with them, you were called a conspiracy theorist. And now it's either verified or seems very plausible to be true.
At a minimum, it seems like there's more evidence that it did start within the Wuhan lab than it did in the open markets surrounding the Wuhan lab. And that's where the Dr. Anthony Fauci's of the world were pushing this storyline that no, it didn't happen in the American taxpayer-funded Wuhan lab. It started in these markets surrounding the lab. So what's next, Casey, on this? I mean, is there a next? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what I hope's next, which is more scrutiny of funding for this kind of research. You know, the already EcoHealth Alliance, which is the group that was really doing a lot of this research and did receive federal funding, although it's not quite the same research as what the Chinese scientists were doing. They've already requested more money. I think that we really need to take a hard look at we talk a lot about the taxpayer perspective. How much and what kind of research is being done at taxpayer expense that is so vulnerable? And why are we paying to research such deadly viruses in places where clearly, like in this lab, the standards of the facility were not up to par? And even if a lab leak didn't happen, it could have happened because all the local workers there were very concerned that a lab leak could have happened and did happen.
Thank you for that, Casey, but we're out of time. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Casey Harbor, I'm Dan McCaleb. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe.